now, the most reasonable talk show host from Sob Choppy to the Redneck Riviera, here is Bob Kerrigan.
Well, good evening and welcome to Within Reason. Now tonight, it's going to be much more enjoyable than it normally is because Mr. Rankin is traveling and unavailable to attempt to rebut everything I say. And so I'll have the opportunity to express my views tonight without Mr. Rankin's interruption and contrariness, which he's getting more and more contrary the older he gets. A woman wrote to me this last week, a very thoughtful letter, and said that she agreed with me many times, didn't like Bush, particularly didn't care for Ann Coulter and some other things in the letter, but she was offended by our comments last week, I think mine more than Bill's perhaps, about the evangelicals. And we were talking at that time about how our military chaplains have been completely overcome or dominated by these, I call, extreme evangelical people as chaplains. Well, here's a huge problem that the military hasn't done a thing about. They have been indifferent to this problem. Why these right-wing clergy are all over the place. Why aren't they speaking out about this issue? And it's this. In the U.S., the culture of unpunished sexual assault in the military. Okay? This is from the Inner Press Service. Marcia Guzman served in the Navy from 1998 to 2002 as a computer technician on the island of Diego Garcia and later in Naples, Italy. She was raped while in boot camp, but was too scared to talk about the assault for the rest of her time in the military. April Fitzsimmons served in the Air Force from 85 to 89 as an intelligence analyst and intelligence briefer for a two-star general. Early in her military career, another soldier sexually assaulted her. 19 years old at the time of her rape, Fitzsimmons reported the assault and named her perpetrator, who was removed from the base. However, she declined the offer of counseling because there was a stigma attached to it, she told IPS. Those who seek counseling are perceived to be at risk as being too weak and vulnerable. Fitzsimmons created a one-woman play, Need to Know, which has been running for 6 years. In the play, she addresses her own sexual assault in the military. When news of rapes and sexual assaults by U.S. soldiers in Iraq against both soldiers and Iraqis began to surface, Fitzsimmons became more active. After reading about the 14-year-old Iraqi girl who was raped by several soldiers, and about Suzanne Swift, I covered that Suzanne Swift story here some time ago, a soldier who, after being raped by another U.S. soldier, went AWOL rather than redeploy with a command that was responsible for allowing the rape to occur. The story is really just a series of incidences and the military's response to it. But this is not new. This has been going on for a long time. In fact, this story concludes by a quote. The crisis is so severe, came from Mrs. Fitzsimmons, that I'm telling women to simply not join the military because it's completely unsafe and puts them at risk. Until something changes at the top, no woman should join the military. So I'll just say to young women who may be watching this program tonight, or the rebroadcast of it, you should be aware of it. You should understand that this will not be vigorously pursued, that you very likely will not be protected. And again, we go back to, where are these evangelical clergy while all of this is going on? Why aren't they leading the cause? I have a theory about it. Now, I know this is somewhat controversial. My theory is that these extremists that are now in control of the chaplain service of the United States military, they basically think that women are and should be subordinate to men, that the man is the head of the household, and that a woman should obey her man, and a woman should do as she is told, not only by military rank, but by male and female. That's their view of women. And you go into these some of these fundamentalist churches, you're going to see it. I mean, it's pervasive. There's no true respect for the independence of women. So if you're going to go in the military service and you're a young woman, you need to think about this, and you need to ask a lot of questions. There's a lot on the internet. A lot of this is now coming out, particularly when people are out of the military service. about what's happened to them and how they're treated. And until we create an atmosphere in the military to protect women, women ought to think twice about going in. Interesting story here from Portugal. What European country, I just gave you the answer, has the most liberal drug laws? Okay, it is Portugal. At the recommendation of a national commission charged with addressing Portugal's drug problem, jail time was replaced with the offer of therapy. The argument was that fear of prison drives addicts underground and that incarceration is more expensive than treatment, which it clearly is. So why not give drug addicts health services instead? Under Portugal's new regime, people found guilty of possessing small amounts of drugs are sent to a panel consisting of a psychologist, social worker, and legal advisor for appropriate treatment, which may be refused without criminal punishment instead of jail. The question is, does the new policy work? Cutting to the core of this, it has been a stellar success. Portugal case study is of some interest to lawmakers in the U.S., confronted now with a violent overflow of escalating drug gang wars in Mexico. The U.S. has long championed a hardline drug policy, supporting only international agreements that enforce drug prohibition and imposing on its citizens some of the world's harshest penalties for drug possession and sales. Listen to this. Yet, the United States has the highest rates of cocaine and marijuana use in the world. And while most of the EU, including Holland, has more liberal drug laws than the U.S., it also has less drug use. If we go back 50 years to, say, 60 years, 1950, and then we look at the number of felonies and misdemeanors each decade, 1950, 1960, 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000, and then 2010, I'll make a prediction that we have had a dramatic increase in criminalizing behavior. Now, what's the outcome of that dramatic increase in criminalizing behavior? We've had to have more judges, more public defenders, more prosecutors, bigger courthouse facilities, bigger jails, more jail overcrowding, work release centers, probation departments, more probation officers. In other words, sort of a cottage government industry has evolved because we have criminalized so many behaviors. And it's in response to anecdotal evidence. Almost always something happens, somebody gets offended, and then a legislature decides they're going to make a law against it, which is bad enough, but then they make it a criminal law. So we have this massive increase in criminal laws. So we're looking at it, we're going to report it on this program, what we find, but I predict that what we'll find is almost a geometric increase in criminal statutes, particular misdemeanors, that all kinds of conduct now is subject to be criminal prosecution. And therefore, more judges, more public defenders, bigger courthouses, more probation officers, cottage industries of government, enclaves of government have expanded. And we don't know why, but I think when we start to look at it, we will understand why. That we need to decriminalize all kinds of behavior now and take it out of, make it an administrative fine or whatever it is, and get this out of our criminal justice system. Well, Portugal has tried this with drug use with great success. It's an interesting study. This is from Time, and the website is time.com, and it's called Drugs in Portugal, Did Decriminalization Work? This is Within Reason. Bob Kerrigan, your host. Thank you for joining us. This program is rebroadcast. You can email us, voicemail us, or send us a telegram. Keep us in the loop on what you think we ought to be covering, and we'll see you next Wednesday night. Thanks.